Hello, everyone. We already have Yoav watching, so that is great. Today we are going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're starting in 5 minutes, so grab your Bibles. 1 Samuel chapter 16. You know what? If you don't have your Bibles, you can just listen along. The text will be up there, but I'll see you in 5, okay? Hello, everyone. Okay, we are in. I see no Cassandra. How could such a thing occur? I'm hoping I have a cat. That's a thing I have. Hopefully, we have a couple of people coming in soon. Yeah, so we're going to be doing 1 Samuel chapter 16. I know I got Don. I know I got Yoav. Maybe if no one shows up, Yoav will come on screen for a bit. Who knows? There you go. Okay. The cat cannot read. The cat is a gremlin, without a doubt, and is playful, will sit exactly where my microphone is, but it cannot read, unfortunately. We have not taught the cat such things. Cassandra, hello. How are you? Oh, can I get some audio from you? I still can't hear you. Oh, and she's gone. Hopefully she'll be back when she figures out her microphone. So for those who are interested, in about a month, we are also going to be doing a special night like we did for Gilgamesh. But this time around, we will be talking about Macbeth. And yes, it is a text which you can find for free online, multiple places. But if you are looking for a production to watch, I recommend going on YouTube. It's a two-parter from the Folger Library. Folger Library is the YouTube channel. And we're doing Macbeth. It's in two parts. This one was partially done by Teller. I was telling everyone about that. So if you're looking for a version of it, this is a very, very good version. This is from the witches scene, obviously. Your double toil and trouble bit. So we're going to be talking about that probably in about a month. Seems like a good thing to do close to Halloween. Cassandra, can I hear you now?
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I hear you too now. Okay, perfect.
Did you by any chance get a chance to watch any of that production yet, or no?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Did you watch the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you endorse this production, or you think it's terrible?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's the only version I've ever seen. Like I said, I've only ever read it before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
Okay, good. It's fun. That is her endorsement. No more than that. Yeah. Okay. We'll jump right into the text, unless Cassandra, you have any announcements or anything you want to say.
No, nothing special.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's all right. All right. So can I get you to read that?
Yes. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go, and I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord,' and invite Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show you what you shall do, and you shall anoint for me him whom I declare to you." Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him, trembling, and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord."
Excellent. Okay, so this first little bit, now I think it was Joseph was mentioning, how long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him? So one of the interpretations, because it says God isn't a man that he should regret, but then he also regretted making Saul king. And so one of the interpretations is that's actually Samuel's feelings. That is not God's feelings. I think there's a way of reading it where God never it's very complex. God never wanted him to be king. So to what extent does he even make Saul king? This is a whole question, but either way, how long will you grieve over Saul since I've rejected him from being king over Israel? And he's filling his horn with oil, and he's going and he's going to make another king. And look at the last time there was an interaction between Saul and Samuel.
Right. It was bad. It was a confrontation.
Yes, it was confrontational, but Saul didn't threaten him. They still left on pretty good terms. He said, "Okay, but will you please bless me? Can you please make sure you do that?" But here it says, how can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me. It seems like some amount of tension has ramped up where, because they left and he asks for the blessing. And so he says that God has taken the kingdom away from him, but that's different than giving the kingdom to someone else. And
right.
Samuel still kind of blesses him at the end. Jacob is saying he has made a video already about how the notion of rejecting works. There is a video if people want to look for it. I believe Jacob is supposed to be finishing off some papers. So that explains why he's actually watching the Bible study this week. If he did not have papers that he should be finishing off, he would not be watching.
Yeah. Productively avoiding work.
Yes. Yes. So that to me is very interesting. Also, because Samuel is a prophet, because he's a prophet, people are scared of him. How often is Samuel's messages intimidating and calling people to the mat and being like, God has a problem with you, right?
Well, the last time he cut, what was it? Was it last week we read that he cut someone's head off, or he hacked?
Yeah, he hacked.
He hacked away at someone.
Yeah, Agag. He hacks that guy apart. He tells. Indeed, he says, "I am listening while writing." Joseph says, "Same." Joseph, congratulations again. Joseph, son was circumcised this week. New baby boy. Very much congratulations.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. Like we think of him, oh, he's like a religious leader. Then hacking, just like
yeah. Well, I was thinking, yeah, that's. I mean, I guess it could be the translation. Hacking sounds gruesome too.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like it's very. I don't know. I mean, the swords too were very heavy, so.
Yeah.
He's not like a little weak, I guess, guy or something.
Yeah. And he spoke against Eli, who was basically his father figure, right? He's speaking against Saul. And so you have this image that when he shows up to town, it says the elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, "Do you come peaceably?" Right? Like they're scared of him.
Peaceably. Yeah, almost like an enemy or something, like if an invader was coming down.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of when God is on the mountain in Sinai, the people are terrified. God says, "Okay, come over here." And they say, "No, just Moses. We can't approach. We couldn't possibly come forward." Right.
Right.
Now
and
this
I was going to say, then Samuel seems like he's scared of Saul too, because he's saying Saul will kill him.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear. A lot of fear happening here. And to what extent is that fear good? Right? Like the people, God says it's good that the people were scared to come up the mountain.
Right.
So it might actually be saying that Jesse's family and the leaders of that town being this way, scared that he's coming, that might actually be good. Have a little bit of respect.
Yeah, that's true. You're not walking all over someone if you fear them just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a part of respect. Um,
Hmm.
Anytime, it might just be that something happened during the day that I need to tell my wife. If I ever say I have to tell you something, she just goes, "Oh no," and I'm like, "No, no, no, it's fine, it's fine."
We
Yeah,
need to talk. Yeah, those are notes.
it's all good. It's all good. I just, yeah. Hello, friend. Yoav, what do you have to say?
Um, on the matter of swords, because this is what I spoke last time. Do you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I hear you
Okay.
great.
So the word sword is mentioned in the sentence. So I also assumed last time that uh, a sword was used to kill Agag, but it wasn't. I mean, I think the right verb would be to hit him with the sword, and I don't think that the prophet carried the sword with him. Only the king and the son of the king carried swords. Anyway, the prophet will not know how to use the sword, and it wasn't the tool he was used to walk with. He would always carry a dagger or a long knife for the business of sacrificing. So what the prophet was doing, he was actually performing the act of slaughtering Agag as a sacrifice.
Right,
And
right,
the verb is yeshasef, which I was pondering for quite a lot. It sounded to me like a combination of terminally cleaved. It's not just cleaved, but terminally cleaved.
right, right.
And reading the Hebrew text, I didn't get the notion that the elders were afraid that the prophet will do them harm, because in Hebrew, peace unto you is the usual
Right,
greeting
it's
when
the
you meet
greeting.
somebody.
Yeah, yeah. It directly translates.
Yeah,
Um,
but
yeah,
I think they were fearing his was bearing bad news, like in the Lord of the Ring, Gandalf, the prophet Gandalf.
right, right. That's
When people wanted to denigrate him, they were describing as the always bearer of bad news.
hmm.
Uh, so Shmuel, I mean, where will you meet Shmuel when there's a war going on and he is about to to call you and your son to fight somebody?
Right,
So
right, right.
that is my angle on that meeting.
I think that's good. I think that's very good. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and there's definitely because the image is that you're not taking the things as spoils; you're turning them into a sacrifice. And that's what I said as well. Is that Agag is like the choicest of, just like they spared the choicest of the animals, they also spared the choicest of the men when they were supposed to destroy everything. Um, okay, let's continue on. Cassandra, we can hear you good. Would you
Oh,
start from verse 5?
okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. And he said, "Peaceably, I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one."
Okay, that's a good beginning. A little bit. This is a bit that everyone's heard. Everyone's heard this. Um, the bit about, particularly, you look on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. But there's something directly rejecting Saul in the way this is described. What is it, Cassandra?
His looking at his stature and his height.
Yes, that's right. See, someone else, Dawn, is noticing that as well. But the tall and handsome one again. That's right. So it specifically states the tall guy, which we also said when it's hand combat where you're holding items, non-projectile fighting. That's your reach. That guy's going to be able to hit you sooner. Sees a guy, says, "Yeah, that guy's perfect, just like Saul was perfect." But no, it's a rejection of Saul. Like the idea that he's rejected. Shalom. The idea that he's rejected David's brother, I don't think is the focus. The focus is not about Abinadab. It's about Saul. That's what the rejection is about. Michael, again, hello.
I couldn't hear anything before. So
Okay.
had to
But you
switch
can
to
hear
headphones.
Good.
Yeah.
Where were we? I think we're at verse 10. Would you continue for us? Or is Michael's stopped?
No, I'm still driving.
Okay.
It's a red light.
Okay. Then Cassandra, go ahead.
And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here."
Okay, pause. The word, I know Michael always sees the text notes and goes, "Wait, what does that mean?" Youngest is not the word for youngest. The word literally means the smallest. So when you're looking at something like that, or smallest. So God has quite literally picked the least of the brothers. And in fact, there's another list of the sons of Jesse, and David is not last on that list. And some people have said, look, he may not actually be the youngest son. He may just be the runt. Like he could be just the shortest, the least impressive. At this point.
I have so I saw something with the lady who wrote this book on all the genealogies, which I bought. But she said it was in there. I haven't found it yet, but it was saying that it seems like Jesse had a second wife, and that David was a son of another wife than the rest of the brothers. So I think because it's the way it lists it in Chronicles or something. So.
Okay. Can make sense.
So he could be Jesse's youngest and his mother's oldest, potentially, or something like that.
Okay. But either way, he does not seem like he should be chosen to be a warrior king, like a guy who's going to lead everyone out and fight guys in battle. So he's the smallest, but he is keeping the sheep. Talked about this before. Should not the king be a shepherd to his people, right? So the idea that he's keeping the sheep may be the notion that he is supposed to be king. That might be within that idea of what he's doing. Just like when we find Saul, he's gathering the wild asses. There's a deep teaching regarding David not being seen as Jewish. You know what? That is fascinating. I really appreciate that. And I want you to come here to talk about it. Chezi is confirming due to a different mother. He does have a different mother. Oh, and maybe it's that mother that's the Moabite side. Who knows? No, Jesse is the child of Ruth. So it's not.
Yeah, Jesse is. All right. Well, you know what's interesting? So that's what he's saying. Because where is it saying here? Right? Gives his description. Oh, we're getting there. Right? We're getting there. Because, he's
a redhead.
That's in the next verse. Right? Yeah, he's red. Because it said so. The guy, it was Peter Lightheart, and he has another thing that's a really good thing about shepherds being like a royal symbol in throughout the Bible. But he was saying ruddy appearance but with beautiful eyes is like he looks like Esau, but he has Rachel's eyes instead of like
Right,
Leah's
right.
weak eyes. He has beautiful eyes.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
and because think about it too, because later on when he flees the palace and his wife puts the idol in the bed and she covers it with a goat's hair, a goat skin, which is what Jacob wore to pretend to look like Esau. So maybe he's got some
You're doing
Edomite
great work there,
genes.
Michael. That's great stuff. That's really good. Okay, let's continue going. Hezi is saying up until that moment, Jesse didn't see him as as his kosher son. So again, this idea of like, could he even be king? Is this the origin of all the jokes about the redheaded stepchild? No, that's a cultural universal. It's a cultural universal. It's not just from here. It's from everywhere. Okay, let's continue on. And Samuel said to Jesse.
And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah.
Okay, what are some parallels with Saul that we might see here? Or anything that you notice besides that? Anything sticking out?
Well, I guess he's also handsome. You keep referring to his looks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You find that particularly funny. It's just like, look at how good looking he is. It's just like, that is an important part. Something we want.
He has to look the part.
Yes, absolutely. One of the ideas of being anointed in the midst of his brothers, commentators will speak of this idea that because you have to be appointed, you need witnesses and you need appointment by the people, not just the prophet. That's going to become even more apparent in verses to come. You'll remember this from when Saul becomes king, that the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David. So he's anointed, but then there's something, he's being spiritually empowered by God. Some kind of a power is upon him. And the word ruddy is also the word for Adam. So that is going to have an important context later. We'll see it. But yeah, there's a bunch of connections to when Saul was appointed. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? Okay, then let's go forward. Introduction and Kingship, Part 1. So he's been made, how many times was Saul made king? Right? Three. So how many times was he rejected? 3. That was number 1 of why David was chosen. So let's get to number 2.
All right. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him. And Saul's servants said to him, "Behold now, a harmful spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is skillful in playing the lyre or lyre, and when the harmful spirit from God is upon you, he will play it, and you will be well." So Saul said to his servants, "Provide for me a man who can play well and bring him to me."
Okay, pause. I don't know if you guys have heard this. The word harmful is the same word for evil. So now an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Michael, do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh no, this is just this is ESV, right? So, they wanted to put a little nuance in because I think King James says evil or whatever.
Yes.
I think so.
Some people actually think that it takes the nuance, like you don't, by translating it as harmful, you don't have to deal with it being bad.
Yeah.
You don't have to struggle with the text when it says harmful. It can mean destructive, but it can also mean evil. Yeah. We get a depression coming from the young Levite. Look, we're not going to say that he's manic depressive, but you could. He has these like, oh, I'm on top of the world. God has empowered me. Then Bob. No, he's tormented by God. Right? The Spirit has gone to David. It's left Saul. And that experience of now being absent of what God had given you before is it's utterly torment to Saul.
Right. He's empty now, kind of.
Yeah.
Was, yeah.
How do you depict, like, I don't know how you do that in a movie, how you portray this person feeling God's presence leave him.
I think a lot of it has to do with the eyes, because I've heard when I do like descriptions of people that are in certain states, there is always something when you look at them, you can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they talk about things like the light leaving their eyes or their eyes are like dull or something like that, that's kind of the experience of it as somebody who's either something really bad happened to them, or sometimes like people I've known who are kind of like, you knew them as normal and then you see them at like the bottom of like the worst addiction and stuff. You really can see that in the eyes. It's really stark.
Don says a good John Williams soundtrack will do it. Yeah, it's interesting because also within this idea of the spirits, and also this idea of like you have to serve somebody, is like the one spirit leaves, but another, he's not empty. He's just the thing he's filled with. I think emptiness is a great word. I think it was good in saying that. But this thing that's inside of him that's like eating him up, that's this thing that empowered him replaced by this thing that brings him down. Let's go to 18.
One of the young men answered, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him." Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me David your son, who is with the sheep." And Jesse took a donkey laden with bread and a skin of wine and a young goat, and sent them by David his son to Saul.
Okay, pause 1 second, because there's a bunch of things that are all popping up all at the same time. He is skillful in playing, but he's also listed here a man of valor, a man of war. Right? Some people have said that the chronology of how he's introduced is all mixed up. Like, is it possible that the slaying of Goliath has already occurred?
Probably.
Like that's the next chapter, but we're sticking with Saul. Like, why does it go here? It's because it's connecting David being anointed with Saul, with the presence leaving Saul.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, sometimes people like use this to explain stuff away, but you really can't, like, a strict chronology is not always the best way to communicate. So
no, yeah. Let's go topically.
Yeah.
And how many really great movies do flashbacks, right? Where you go, wait, how did that happen? And they go back a little.
At least 4 or 5.
Yes. I'm gonna find the thing that is being recommended. Gustav Dorr, I've talked about him before. He's like my favorite artist as far as people depicting stuff. So I'm going to see if I can find the picture that is being spoken of.
Gustav does a lot of engravings because I see him a lot when I look up stuff.
He was commissioned to do like the entire Bible.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like, man, how much did this guy work? And then he also did Paradise Lost. So for stuff people like in the corner. There's Agag about to be slaughtered.
Oh, okay, yeah.
David. Huh, that's a very interesting image of Saul. He looks kind of effeminate. That is a great image. That's so good. Spoilers, everybody. Sorry. Worried about spoiling the Bible.
So yeah, he has a lot of good stuff. I did a Sunday school presentation, and it was the Ezekiel in the Valley of Bones one, and his engraving came up, and I really liked that one.
Good. Yeah, he's so good. Just really knocking it out of the park, in my opinion. Okay, let's go back to the text. Send me David, your son, who is with the sheep. So it's again one of these like the importance of this bit of how he's with the sheep, he's with the sheep, he's with the sheep. We can see the direction it's going in, and the idea that the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Lord, has left Saul, and they say the Lord is with him. The Lord is with David. Okay, let's go from verse 21.
And David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, Let David remain in my service, for he has found favor in my sight. And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the harmful spirit departed from him.
Man. Okay, the notion that he becomes the armor bearer, that only becomes very clearly spelt out after the slaying of Goliath, which again has not happened yet. People have made mention of this, of like, it seems like David gets introduced a bunch of times. The tension in their relationship, that it seems like God is using David to relieve and refresh Saul, but that he will usurp him. There's something about this.
Yeah, that's interesting because David kind of becomes the object that Saul like focuses on, right? Because he's gonna take it all away from him. So in a way, he's the source of the pain, kind of, but he's also like the balm to it.
Yeah. And Saul is David's enemy, but David is not Saul's enemy. Right? It's like David wants good for him, seeks well for him, spares his life whenever he has an opportunity. Saul takes every opportunity to try to kill him.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about today, like the other day, like kind of the contrast between, some kind of like a chivalrous kind of organization or code of conduct versus like a barbarian one. And like, because the Canaanites are like the original barbarians, and their whole thing is that like the guy at the top he's always in danger of being usurped by someone, younger who's up and coming. And so he has to control everything through fear and manipulation and access to women, which Saul does. Whereas, if you have the kind of not say, I guess it's more explicit when you have an idea of chivalry or something, but a King Arthur kind of thing, it's built on this thing of trust where everybody knows that if they do well, in their part, in their place in the system, that it benefits everybody. And so then the king can trust the people beneath him, and that makes the whole thing stronger. And so it's definitely David is a good subordinate in that system, but Saul's treating him like he's in the barbarian system, so he doesn't trust him. So
yeah, like in those nations where a warlord rises up, he takes control, and then it's his number two who will kill him and take over from him.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they always have to kick out the sons.
Right.
We're getting too many teen men here. Let's go kick them out into the wilderness. And then they turn into their own little barbarian band, and it comes back to bite you later on. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I was noticing this, and I didn't know if I should mention it if I was going too far, but Hezi has said it, so therefore it's true. Is that being the armor bearer, he's literally the armor wearer in the next chapter, right? And that would have been seen as that's one of the roles, the guy who drinks the cup, right? Who makes sure it's a position of prominence, but it's also directly connected to serving the king. The guy who would be the wine bearer for the king or a role like that.
Yeah.
Man, I'm reminded of, I mentioned it before, the series Kings that was on NBC, where they get into the relationship between Saul and David, and how David supports him, but Saul needs David, but hates him and is threatened by him. It's just such good drama. It's also what happens with Macbeth and Banquo at the very beginning of Macbeth, which we will get to, where they're friends, but the one sees the other as an enemy. There was something else that I wanted to bring up. Oh, I remember. So the second, it actually gets a great show. I didn't know other people had even seen it. Dawn says, it's ironic that David is placed close enough to Saul to be able to kill him, but consistently refuses. That's right. So one of the things that happens to Saul when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, Cassandra, do you remember what happens right after Saul becomes king? When the Spirit rushes on him?
Doesn't he save the city?
Saves the city. That's one of them. This is the problem. Yes, that's one of them.
Okay.
But the first time, I don't know if you remember, it says, for this reason, there's an expression. Do you remember what the expression was?
Oh, so something about prophesying like Saul, or?
Yes. Yeah, he has the transformative experience, and is Saul also among the prophets?
Oh, yes, that's it.
Yes. And I want to bring us here. This is from 2 Kings. So kings are going off to battle. Elisha, and one of the kings asks, I need an actual prophet of the Lord, of Hashem, to speak. And so it says, and Elisha said to the king of Israel, what have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. His parents were Jezebel and Ahab. But he says that because there's the king of Judah there, okay, fine, I'll help you guys out. How does Elisha prophesy? This is how Elisha prophesies. Read starting 15 for me.
But now bring me a musician. And when the musician played, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he said, thus says the Lord, I will make this dry stream bed full of pools.
Okay, pause. So this is an image I don't know if people have in their minds. Okay, I want to prophesy. How do I do it? Bring forward the guy with his acoustic guitar and have him play a bunch of riffs, and then the music will take hold of me, and in that state I will be able to say what God wants. We have such brief little bits of how the prophets prophesied. Sometimes they dream, sometimes they have visions. But here in this story, it's, guy with the emo hair starts playing an acoustic set, and the prophet starts spitting verse. Right? We've had that experience where music takes a hold of us.
Right. Immediately I was thinking of like the phenomenon of a rap battle, kind of, where it's like nothing is scripted, so you don't really know what's going to happen. So, but you just drop the beat and then it goes, and then,
yeah,
then it happens.
That's a great way of talking about it. That like there's this continues in the Ethiopian church, the Ethiopian Orthodox. They have a tradition of improv poetry as part of their liturgy, where like this idea that God is going to work in this unprompted, but you can imagine these people become very knowledgeable in poetry. And then the music kind of takes hold of them, and then God can speak through through this kind of a medium, right? Music, we find music inspirational. That's where the term music comes from. Music as in the muses, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think, I talked, actually, this was a talk I had with Christian Golden, and he's like, he's been a worship leader and he goes to charismatic church and stuff. And he complained that like people are bash, which they do. People do bash the more contemporary worship, but like, it's just this thing of distrust of emotions or whatever, without realizing that like there's always some emotion present. There is no like people like to talk about the myth of religious neutrality. I like to talk about the myth of emotional neutrality. Like arrogance.
The really godly service is where everyone's miserable. That's because if they enjoyed themselves. Yeah.
So, but like really, and it's funny because you think about like what with Saul and the harmful spirit or whatever, and that like we do have like a mental health crisis and stuff, and how like just singing psalms or psalms or songs or songs derived from scripture and things like that, it helps to like the act of singing, it does all this like releasing of endorphins and stuff, and it regulates your moods. So it's like if people sang more, they wouldn't need as much therapy and medication or whatever, like, and God tells us to do that. But
or the opposite too, Michael. Like I remember my sister listening to emo music for like an hour on end when she was a teenager and being like, you got to stop doing that. Don't do that. That's terrible for you, right? Like, we can propagate emotions within ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and even like that, it's like, yes, it's bad when you are from a otherwise place of contentment, like introducing strange new emotions for the sake of entertainment. But it's good to have that stuff, like, you know, that's what I just think, like, I like country music because it's all like stories, and there's like various kind of types of country songs that are fitting for all sorts of different events of life. So some of them are happy, some of them are sad. You know, when your dog dies, you need the sad song, not the happy one. So,
as John is saying, music to bleed out to.
Yeah.
Yoav, what did you have to bring for us? Thank you for coming back.
On the subject of music, David was playing the lyre, or did he? I can never be sure, because Hebrew had a near-death experience, and it was resurrected, and some of the words just didn't come out right. So the word in Hebrew is kinor, which is now used for a violin, but it was definitely not a violin that David was playing. It probably was a lyre. For example, in Hebrew, the words for an orchestra and a choir got mixed up. So, what instrument was it? The only clue that I can think of is in the name of the Lake of Galilee, which is Kinneret, is the female form of Kinnor. So it was some kind of an instrument that perhaps resembled in shape the shape of the Lake of Galilee, which sort of oval. For another example in Hebrew, when you read about bears coming out of the forest and devouring somebody, I can never be sure whether it was a bear or a wolf or maybe a hyena, because the words in Hebrew are so similar, and I'm quite sure they got mixed up on the way. So we always boast that we are the Hebrew speakers can bring some kind of insight to the discussion. Sometimes our insight will be misleading. It's a word of caution.
This here is based on archaeological evidence of what some instruments around that area looked like. So you can hear what some of it may have possibly sounded like. Yoav, I think your perspective is very, very important as far as like, what does this mean? What would it sound like? You can listen to some of this stuff. There's another guy. His name is, let me make sure it's muted. If I share the sound, it sometimes will get us flagged. This guy is named Peter Pringle. I don't know if people have heard of him. He did. He's translated some of the Epic of Gilgamesh as well. He put to music, and it's quite epic and terrifying. And he's doing Psalm 23 on a version of a lyre, which would have been from around the time. And I think it even said at the beginning, we found it at Megiddo. We found this instrument, a version of it there.
This particular instrument resembled in shape the shape of the Lake of Galilee. So I would say that whatever David was playing was a similar instrument.
Interesting. Do you have anything to add as well, Yoav, on the topic of the role music plays in our own lives, of like taking hold of us, kind of a thing?
Yes, the parallel of Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey. Of course, how Homer, the start of the Greek culture is the songs of Homer.
Yeah, the word epic literally in Greek means goat song. So it's a song that the shepherds would sing. right? The shepherds sitting around telling, like the folk, what we would call folk tales, right? That's literally what the word epic means. Ah, yes, another goat song.
Well, one other interesting thing. This is just when people talk about like a sacrifice of worship or something like that. When the composers up until like the 19th, close to the 20th centuries or whatever, would write a piece of music, and you had it written for a orchestra of strings instruments. They would say basically it's like that's a whole hillside's worth of sheep that you had to kill to make all the strings. So music was still a form of animal sacrifice, just in a little bit of a different form. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective to have. And at the, like, you think about how expensive instruments would be. That's one of the images, like Christians will take this image from Revelation of the people being given white robes and playing harps as this image of people in heaven. But what it really is an image of people as priests. Because at the temple, there would be people in white robes with instruments like the lyre, like the harp, playing, and that would be part of the experience of going, is hearing the instruments. Like it would be, it would take a lot in order to have one. Actually, discuss for yourself for 1 second. I'm going to grab something.
Okay, discussing for myself, there was the mention of the story not being linear. And I think the Odyssey, as far as, I didn't read the original, but I would strongly think that the way the Odyssey was told was from the middle back to the beginning and then going on. Because I think that Odysseus was stuck on an island and at some point yeah.
That's right. The term is in media res. That one of the forms of the epic is that you start in the middle.
Yeah, I think that was a standard practice to keep the story interesting because everybody knew the story. So you keep reshuffling the events to make it interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the war would have been like a current topic that everyone would have known.
And then that also gives you the method, the perspective. Oftentimes, it's not the narrator telling the story. It's Odysseus telling the story himself, because he washes up on some shore and someone says, "What happened to you?" And he'll break down into tears, and then he'll tell his story, right? It gets to be that first person perspective because it's in the middle of the story. So I grabbed a little book that I've made reference to before called The White Ram. It's based on the Midrash related to the binding of Isaac. And the Midrash story connects everything together. So it's The White Ram. And there we go. The White Ram. And near the end, it speaks of the ram and what happens to its body after it's been sacrificed. So it says, and from the ram's ashes, the mortar for the altar of the great temple was made. And from his bones on the mountain, the foundations of Jerusalem were made. And from his bowels, the 10 strings of King David's harp were made. And from his hide, the prophet Elijah made a cape. And then the horns of this ram, one will be blown from Mount Sinai. One is blown from Mount Sinai when they hear the sound of the trumpet, and the other will be like the end of days. And so they connect themselves. David's music is connected directly to the almost sacrificing of Isaac. They would make a direct connection between those things within the Midrash. I just thought you would like that. What else?
Well, one other thing I thought about a little bit is that music is the art form that is well, in its natural state, I would say, the least susceptible to idolatry, because it's transient. It's gone. You sing the song and then the song is not there anymore. So it's very the nature of it. Just that there's something very interesting about that kind of ephemeral quality of it. That it's especially before like recordings and stuff like that. You would just have the song and then you have the memory, and that was it.
Yeah.
The immediate experience. I was thinking about that with because let's say when jazz was popular, there's all these jazz bands and jazz clubs and stuff, and so every performance, whether it was they're covering the same song, it was always different because they were reworking it, different singer, different interpretation. And so if you had one really great performance, it kind of just, that was it. It's over now. No one will ever hear it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And experiencing music live as well, where it's a completely different experience. And you can watch bands, live sets are on YouTube, and sometimes you almost get there, but there's a quality that's missing. I wonder if that's why YouTube things like Walk Off the Earth, where instead of music videos, it's them doing something where it took 20 takes, but it has to occur one take just occurring all at once, where they get it perfect.
Well, there's also something kind of crazy interesting about once the recording technology was invented or whatever, because it is literally an example of time travel and a weird thing of things that happened at different times suddenly happening at the same time, which is almost in a sense of maybe something closer to the way that God sees events and things. We always experience everything linearly, but when you listen to a song with a whole bunch of parts, it's all at once, and it's this different kind of a thing.
There's a bunch of cowboy things happening in the chat. So Tayo, John A says older country music is better. Hank Williams, Johnny Cash. Good. But no, and music, man, can it possess you? I remember one time, because I did work as an actor, someone asked me, "Can you, how quickly can you cry?" And I was like, "I don't know. I had to cry when I was on stage." They're like, "But could you just cry?" I'm like, "I don't know." So we picked some emo song, hit play, and I just sat there and I just worked myself up to cry in 2 minutes or whatever.
Is it because the music was so horrible?
No. It's because I was into emo. Play some breakup stuff.
So they just watched you cry?
Yeah, it was really awkward. We reflected afterwards that it was actually a terrible decision. Because it sounds oh, okay, yeah, let's see what this is. Oh, this is awkward. Oh, he's just right in front of us, just crying. We don't know where to look. Oh, no.
Yeah. It's part of when you watch plays, it's intense when there's a scene like that. Because actually watching someone in front of you have an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
I don't know where to look. It's awkward. It's a play, but it's huh.
Yeah, I think that's something that plays give us that that movies can't. You get a little bit of distance. You don't feel like this person is in front of you.
Right, yeah.
I think I want to end ourselves there, despite the fact that I was hoping that Tayo would swing in. But he's wearing a cowboy hat, and that's the most I can ask for. There is a time travel midrash. Okay. So we have people getting where God takes a hold of them in a good way, but then God enabling people to be taken a hold of in a bad way. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to this. Is it good that David helps Saul? Should David take a step back and let Saul self-destruct? I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's like that other time where he's playing the music and he throws a spear at him. So, I mean,
yeah, not always effective.
You want like the least amount of that going on probably as possible. So
everyone's a critic. I'm sure he played fun.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like a mercy that God was giving him, that David was there to give him something because he was suffering.
Yeah.
And so I think it was good, but I don't know, maybe Saul couldn't accept it, and that was part of this problem.
Oh, that's so good. Cassandra, that's so good, because people will say that even the flood is God's mercy. Like that it's wiping out people in some situations is one of God's mercies. And so David will destroy Saul, but is merciful. Like, is God's love also in his life?
Right, yeah. It's there.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Was there anything else?
No, well, because it made me think of like because Judas hangs himself. And, Peter betrays Jesus too, but he doesn't do that. He does the thing you ask forgiveness and accept it. And I don't know, maybe Judas could have been redeemed. But I think my grandma told me something, because her brother was always very anti-God, very personally, like not just an atheist, just like he really hated religion. He hated all of that stuff. And, he made a lot of decisions in life that made him suffer like long-term into his old age before he died. And my grandma talked about, some people, they don't let God bless them. Because my grandma had problems too, but she also like had a lot of good things happen to her that really like buoyed us up. For one thing, my uncle never had kids. And then I think he reached an age where him and his wife, well, he got married and divorced a bunch of times too. And then I think there's a point where like he just couldn't have kids because he missed his chance, because he was one of those guys that was like in the 60s. He was out there. He was doing cocaine. He was like living that life. And so he never got to have any of the other good stuff with it. And I just remember thinking that like, oh, yeah, being able to accept help, being able to accept forgiveness, mercy, love, like all of these things, if you can't do it, it really does destroy you. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's just what I think when I look at Saul.
Yeah, and there's a notion that is very big within Judaism, the idea that the negative prophecies could be undone. So the story in Jeremiah goes and sees a potter, and the potter's going with a piece of clay, and the clay, something wrong occurs, and the potter reshapes the vessel into something else. And God says, I can do that. If I say that I'm going to destroy someplace, but then they change, I can prosper them and turn them into something good. But at the same time, if I proclaim blessing over something and they repent of the blessing and they start doing evil and stuff, I can change how I'm working with them too. Right? And so Saul, who has been utterly rejected, will repent later on, and God will work with him again. Almost even more infuriating that it doesn't have to be like this for him. Because if he's just like a cursed character, then we all just move on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because, it's like he knows this. He knows at some point that David's the one that's supposed to be king.
Right.
And like, and like David, because isn't it even, well, it's close to his death, but he sets like into motion Solomon's coronation ahead of time, because the other son is trying to take hold of the opportunity or whatever. And it's like, you know, there could have been a changing of the guard or whatever. You know, it's like kind of the thing that Matthew Pajot and his little thing, kind of what we've spoken of with like Cain and Abel. It's like God was closing the door on like one part of Cain's life. He could have had, well, I mean, he did have another part of his life. It could have been different than the way that it was potentially, but you know,
it is very, as people say, it's very difficult to retire. It's difficult to say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. Some people have noted that about the American political system, that the politicians are all like 80 because people won't hand over. They won't give up. They won't stop.
That is the thing with the boomers. And it's tough because I talked to Neil the other day or whatever. As soon as they all became adults, they were the majority of the population, and they continued being the majority of the population through every stage of life. So there was no conflict against their, what they thought was a good idea. So
I think you will love this, Michael. So because I like Shakespeare, I keep up on Shakespeare stories, and
I didn't know he was still writing.
Shakespeare Productions, I mean.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that, Michael. Very clever. And so Patrick Stewart, back in when he was trained, white dudes were still allowed to play Othello. And he wanted to play Othello. But how do you get Patrick Stewart to play Othello? So what they did is they did an interpretation of Othello where it takes place in Africa and everyone is African except for Othello. He's played by, so it's still the image of the colonizer coming in, except instead of Othello being the only black dude, he's the only white dude. That's actually kind of clever, and I really wish I got to see this production. But the second thing is that a couple years ago, not that long ago, what's his name? Gandalf, Magneto. What's the guy's name?
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen. They did a blind casting of Hamlet where they didn't care about people's age, sex, or race, because even though Hamlet's supposed to be 30, 82-year-old Ian McKellen played him. Where they're like, oh, it's fine. We did it as an interpretation that we didn't care about demographics for the casting. But it's very clearly the most boomer thing ever. I refuse to stop playing Hamlet, even though I'm in my 80s. I won't stop. I'm the best. You will let me do it forever.
Oh my gosh, that's like in Dear Evan Hansen, that guy, because he did the Broadway play, but he was much too old to play a high schooler, but he did the movie anyway.
It's like, you're 47. I don't care. You're not going to take this away from me.
I just watched that with my wife a few weeks ago. I thought it was weird. I was like, they did kind of a good job. I mean, he didn't look like the age that he actually is. It was very strange.
Yeah.
Because the other people did look like actual, high school or younger aged and stuff too.
When I was in high school, I thought the people in high school movies looked right. That's the thing that's so strange to me, because the people who were at the end of high school, when I was at the beginning of high school, I thought looked so much older than me. But now I'm just like, why are these 87-year-olds in high school? Yoav, set us straight.
Going back to the subject of music,
Yes.
There was a discussion in the comments. I will phrase it differently than what. When Paul van der Clay goes to heaven, he will certainly hear music. And this music will be better than the music that we hear that he has heard before. Can I, as an engineer, describe to Paul van der Klee in what way will it be better? In what dimension will it be better? So Paul van der Klee is a very long person, but he's not infinitely long. He also has a long attention span, but not an infinite attention span. The low end of the frequency is limited by two things. It's limited by your length. You cannot hear sounds that are lower than your own body length. And you cannot hear sounds that are changing slower than your attention span. Once your length and attention span become infinite, then the range of sound extends infinitely into the lower frequencies. Just think about bass, and under it there is another bass, and under it there's another bass, all the way to infinity.
Wow, yeah. That's fascinating. Because so much, like, we consider ourselves not as we are, but as our bodies are. So to experience, like, every now and then they've shown an image of what a bird might look like to another bird, where the eyes of the bird can see other colors that we can't see. So there's possibilities of art that we can't even fathom within our own bodies right now. The dog whistle will become a musical instrument that humans will use. Right?
It goes the same as understanding the God's long-term plan. It's like the first chapter of the Silmarillion. Once you can hear the music, all of the music, it's equivalent to understanding the whole of the plan.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. I think we're going to cut it. Thank you, Yoav, for coming in. All those. Yoav, why do you leave? Because you are on screen as much as you are off screen. Come on.
It's it's a plot device. It makes the podcast more interesting.
It's true.
You don't have the same camera angle all the time.
Yeah, your background changed at one point. I was like, what is going on? That's great. That's
my name.
Yeah.
It's a piece of clay that was found in Masada. And we absolutely know the story. We actually know who wrote this and why. And it's interesting since that the name was not common in that area. I mean, we all know Yoav ben Surya, and there are lots of Yoavs in Israel at the moment. At that time, there were not many. That is a certain Yoav that was there. It's a story for another time.
Okay, good. Well, and we'll get to Yoav soon. Oh, what is that?
It's not a Yoav.
That is a Roman denarius.
I was gonna say
of Emperor Trajan from about, I think, like 114 to 116 AD, something like that.
How much did that cost you?
$40.
Really? Shouldn't it be more expensive?
Well, it's $3 worth of silver, so.
Okay.
Yeah, they made a whole lot of them. So.
Is that the one where they made it with a hammer? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
They
engraved
the hammer. Yeah, and all the coins are different because they're not all perfectly centered. Because you just smash it once, and that's how you made your coin. Okay, guys. Next time we're going to talk about David and Goliath, a beloved story. Yoav as a character will appear soon because Joab or Joab is David's nephew, right? You know who Joab
Yeah,
is,
I don't know what the family relation is.
Oh, you don't? Okay,
Yeah.
do you know who Joab is as a character? Because he's
Yes.
controversial. The first time I saw your name, I was surprised you had
There
it. 'Cause
are-
I was like,
there
I
are-
don't know if he's a good guy.
Everybody in the Bible is controversial. David is.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yes, there are reasons why I got my name. Again, story for another time.
Story for another time. So we'll see you guys next week. We'll be talking about David and Goliath and what that has to do with the serpent. Okay, goodbye.